staffers there. Well, it's also important to mention that the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, has also swung in her support behind Kamala Harris, as well as, of course, Bill and Hillary Clinton. They've backed her bid to become the Democratic Party's nominee. She said her enthusiastic support for Kamala Harris for president is now official, personal and political. Well, Kamala Harris responded earlier on today, saying, "Together we're going to win this." Here in the UK, though, in the House of Commons today, the Prime Minister said that Joe Biden had been an asset to the United States.
A man who, during 5 decades of service, never lost touch with the concerns of working people and always put his country first. A true friend of the Labour movement, his presidency will leave a legacy that extends far beyond America to freedom and security on this continent.
Well, also speaking in the House of Commons today was the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. She said that the Rwanda scheme has cost the British taxpayer £700 million. She described the migrant deterrence scheme as the most shocking waste of taxpayers' money she'd ever seen and said she would take urgent action to start clearing the asylum backlog in one simple change that she said would save the taxpayer an estimated £7 billion over the next decade, and that's after nearly 1,500 migrants arrived in the UK over the last week, crossing the English Channel. Just one more news story to bring you concerning the ex-footballer Joey Barton, who's due to appear in court over controversial tweets directed at female football pundit Eni Aluko. It follows an investigation by Cheshire Police, who said the charges related to messages the former footballer sent in January. If he's convicted, he could face up to 2 years in jail or take an unlimited fine. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Now it's time for Headliners.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at Tuesday's top stories. I'm your host, Simon Evans. Joining me tonight, we have Just Stop Oil alumna Cressida it's a Cressida Wetton and Just Stop the Boats enthusiast Leo Kurtz. What will get stopped first, I wonder? As my mum used to say, and wish in the other. Anyway, how are you both? You all right?
Yep. Happy not to be in prison.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's always good.
You're one of the more fortunate Cressidas.
I am. And maybe now people will be able to say it and pronounce it.
Yeah. Do you think you'll become a meaningful demographic? You'll probably become one of those shorthands like a Karen or something.
Oh, God.
Let's have a look at our front pages. Obviously, we're all sleeping with the hangover of last night's shock announcement. Now, Labour opens door to giving asylum to 70,000. That is the Daily Mail. The rest of the papers are mostly America-focused. Senior Democrats throw weight behind Harris to take on Trump. That's The Guardian. The Times have donor dollars pour in as Harris promises victory. She really looks like she's on a hunt there. The Express, Farage, more Tory MPs will soon defect to reform. And handsome young George, I think, on the front, the anointed in the eye, that is Kamala Harris. They are anticipating that she will not face any sort of selection process. And finally, the Daily Star, with perhaps the most insightful commentary. The next president will be Michelle Obama, says the asparagus psychic. Those were your front pages. So, Cressida, we will kick off with The Guardian.
OK, senior Democrats throw weight behind Harris to take on Trump. So she's got lots of support. I mean, I've been at GB News all day listening to a variety of opinions, so I know there's a lot of people who aren't supporting her. Yeah. But Nancy Pelosi is behind her. She was one of the people that most wanted Biden out. So she's got what she wants. So it's looking like she might do it. She's got lots of...
might smoothly sail through.
She might. I mean, she's that's what it looks like. That's what's going to happen. She's got a lot of support from celebrities as well. There's already lots of Katy Perry's, big political voice. She's supporting her.
Bloom of Faith expressed.
Oh, probably. I mean, I don't know. That's
Kerry Katona is coming for Trump, though. I'm not joking. I don't know if she's going to rip a T-shirt off at the convention. But.
Pelosi has genuinely been one of the ones they think behind the scenes who's been urging him to leave. I read something today which is from the Wall Street Journal. It was just a screenshot. The opening of the whole story was recounted an incident which took place in 2021, in October 21. And I get slightly confused with the different sort of departments and venues and so on in Washington. Well, exactly. But apparently Biden was trying to persuade the Democrats to sign off on $1 trillion infrastructure bill. Right. And he was so unable to explain it in his own language that she waited until he left and then went, right, listen, this is what he was trying to say. And from that moment on, he has not spoken in that environment. He has not spoken to that. This is like a select committee or whatever that they have.
And who knows if he's actually still alive? He hasn't been seen in days, and and some Republicans have asked for literally proof of life. And he's just given what they call it, an appearance at some sort of staff or Democrat Congress thing. But it was over the phone, and those can easily be faked. You can get an Indian scammer to fake one of those. I've had those calls.
I mean, you have to say they are doing everything they can to create the environment rich with the opportunity for conspiracy to grow in. This seems to be like the signature kind of characteristic of American politics in the last few weeks, right? They did this with the shooting. There was just so much that could have been sort of cleaned up, could have been made available and transparent. But no, they don't. They like almost to kind of create this,
well, they could have sorted this out months ago, because it's a really weird...
And they certainly could have just had Biden live on camera saying, I resign. It is with great regret that I have come to recognise that, but no, it's a tweet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No press conference, but totally
screenshot.
A
screenshot of a letter.
So, nothing. And who knows? It's obviously him. It's not a letter that he wrote.
No.
It's so it's the people around it. But I know, like who was it? The Soviet leader Brezhnev, was it? Who was basically senile and completely incompetent in his last few years. But the structure, the apparatus around him, kept it going. And I think it's the same here.
That word Kremlinology, which is what they used to describe the science of trying to read the runes of what was really going on behind the walls, is now very, very much the skill set that you need to understand American politics. How did we get here?
It's interesting that Obama hasn't come out and backed Kamala yet. So maybe Big Mike, Big Mike's gonna be ripping the T-shirt off at the Democrat conference, busting the guns out. Hulk Hogan's gonna be like,
Michelle Obama.
How do I get shoulders like that?
Who is a completely different candidate who of this Big Mike that you're talking about. Michelle Obama is currently the second favourite after this is extraordinary.
In the Olympics?
No, but to be the candidate, I mean, Kamala is now 2-1. Right. I'm feeling guilty because I had mates who had Gavin Newsom from a year ago, and he'd come in from 50-1 to 8-1, and I was saying I'd hold on to that. That's looking good. Well, he's gone. Things happen very fast.
But I don't fancy her chances against Harris's chances against Trump. I mean, surely Michelle's the only one, surely, that would have the charisma and the name and the glamour.
Just to be slightly kind of devil's advocate, I do think Kamala Harris has a certain amount of... I mean, it will appeal to different people differently, but she has a certain kind of, like, relative vitality compared... Trump is an old man. I know he has that kind of...
No, Twitter's covered in all these amazing word salads. It's possibly slightly worse than Biden. I don't fancy that in a debate.
It is odd how we see a lot of her doing that kind of... we're not going to get onto any other paper, are we? We see a lot of her doing that kind of time is the surrounding of everything that we have and that was and that will be.
What has been and will be and we are.
Tomorrow was yesterday, 3 days ago, and all that business. That's understandable that you would clip those things to kind of besmirch her reputation, but I've never seen the opposite. I've never seen any evidence. Do you know what I mean? You would think occasionally you would run into her, even from a teleprompter.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, she must be quite smart, because she knew exactly who to, get on her knees in front of.
That's true. It does remind me of when I used to work on The Big Breakfast 20 years ago and had to write, like, the links and stuff. Yeah, for Johnny Vaughan, who was brilliant. Johnny Vaughan was a fantastic news presenter. And for a while they had Kelly Brook on as the host after Denise Van Outen. and I got her sacked unintentionally because I wrote a link for her and she couldn't say it. It was a slightly kind of reverse word order thing.
I've read a lot of your links, and I can well believe.
And the next day there was a staff meeting for all the writers saying, "Listen, you're not to give Kelly Brook curveballs like that anymore." and news of that meeting got leaked and was in the Sun.
Right.
And off the back of that, she left and she went to Hollywood and became famous. So maybe I can do that for Kamala. Let's have a look very quickly at the cover of the Times, not the Time magazine.
So the Times has Kamala Harris as well, also looking annoying. And it also has this story: Britons no longer think honesty is the best policy. So Britain is growing increasingly tolerant of fraud and theft, and it's a trend that will cost the benefit system an extra £2 billion this year, the government has claimed. So benefit fraud is likely to rise by 5% a year, and I guess this is going to be ongoing. And about £7.4 billion a year is lost to benefit fraud already. And this is tolerant of fraud, their own fraud, claiming benefits that they're not entitled to, and also tolerant of fraud in others. And this is the breakdown of a sort of high trust society. As we've got this sort of neoliberal, fragmented communities and mass migration, multiculturalism.
Yeah.
So we're not seeing these these bonds of communities that hold everybody in line. That's going.
I think you're really right, and I think it's a great shame. I even remember it, I mean, maybe like sentimentally, but from my childhood, a much stronger sense that you knew, like, whether people on the street were ill or well or needed some help or care or whatever. As soon as people don't know their neighbours, that immediately creates the sense that you're just in a rat run, right?
Yeah.
The war of all against all.
And of course you get lots of propaganda to tell you that it's actually a wonderful thing. So.
Yeah.
Well, I've also seen some stories about this in the news of late. There's been a lot of, this guy was a bodybuilder and he was claiming benefits, because it makes a great headline, doesn't
Well, they used to have a thing, I remember, like, reading examples of this in the days. Everyone imagines before the welfare state, people just used to put their back out, couldn't work, starve and die. But it wasn't like that. There were all kinds of benevolent societies within organisations. They might be local, they might be industry specific or whatever. But the point was, if you knew a bloke was off work with a bad back and you walked past his garden and he was digging it, you were like, Alf, I thought you said you weren't, you know what I mean? We're all chipping in so that you can, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And growing up in Scotland, I mean, like, the benefit system was seen as a career, working out how to game it. And like the Guardian comes out and is like, well, actually only 2% of benefits claimants are fraudulent. Man, if it's only 2%, I must have known every single one of them. You know what I mean?
Well, you're onto conspiracy theories now. The Daily Mail, please, Cressida, very quickly.
New Labour opens door to giving asylum to 70,000 people. That's great, isn't it? I think it was 90,000 a few days ago. I've been reading different numbers. Tens of thousands of illegal migrants will get asylum in the UK after Yvette Cooper scrapped the Rwanda scheme. So it looks like Labour are planning to do a bit of reapply again, even though you came here illegally. And I'm not calling this figures massaging, but they're going to, if they quickly give people asylum, then the numbers are down,
You've got to either give them asylum or get shot of them. You can't have them bunging up hotels and just in limbo for ages. That is inhumane, and also, of course, it's completely unhealthy for the point of view of the localities that they're in.
Yeah.
I think, to be fair, at this point, this is really them kind of just trying to clear their desk of the Tories mess, which is what created it.
But they're also dangling a carrot for more people to come over. So.
Well, that's it. If they gave 70,000 asylum seekers full citizenship and put 2 gunships off the coast of Calais, I would call that, kind of working compromise. Oh, well, that's the front pages covered. In part 2, we've got the truth behind the Trump assassination, Kamala Harris laughing maniacally once again, and a threat to democracy, although surprisingly those aren't all the same story. See you in a moment.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It was also announced that the Prince of Wales is set to star in a new 2-part documentary on ITV covering his mission to try and eradicate homelessness.
Well, let's talk about this and much, much more with Angela Levin, royal biographer, who joins us in the studio. I'm glad to hear that this documentary's been made, Angela, because I worried that he made this big announcement about homelessness, and I thought, goodness me, here is somebody who could maybe do something about this. And then it's all seemed to have gone quiet.
He's been very busy with it, actually. He's gone all over the country to see different areas and how they have been, and to try and change people's attitude to homelessness, that they're people who need help and want to get back into a normal life, and he's there to do it. I mean, we mustn't forget that I think it was 2009, he slept out in the street to see for himself what it was like. And he also helps people who are selling the magazine.
Big Issue, no?
Yes, The Big Issue. And he's worked all day long with the same man twice now. So I think he was actually just covering the basic about what it was like for him and how he can now help other people. He and Catherine are putting £3 million straight away into that, and it's going to
Where
be...
does that money come from?
Their own foundation, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not taking it from our tax or anybody else's, you know. And there will be a lot more. And he's been getting the money to do this. And I think he wants to do this so badly because of his mother. You know, she took them to see people who were homeless.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners with me, Simon Evans, and I'm joined by Cressida DEI hire Wetton and Leo ED spokesperson Kirst.
Is that erectile dysfunction?
I don't know what it is. I assume you're one of the people who laid into Cheetah or whatever, Kimberly Cheetle today. Have you been watching that? It makes extraordinary scenes. I don't know if they're coming up, so I shouldn't anticipate it. Anyway, Mace, she was the best one. Did you see Mace?
Oh, yeah, unrepeatable.
He wanted to put a clip in. I said, I don't know if we can show that.
Are you allowed
clip?
to speak like that? Well, she did. Anyway, Cressida, we start with our own Nigel's acerbic assessments in the Telegraph of the developments across the pond.
Farage, it would be potty to vote for Kamala Harris simply because she's a woman. Reform leader accuses Joe Biden's wife, Jill, of elder abuse and says he should never have been in the White House in the first place. This is just like Farage's kind of thoughts today.
Yeah.
He's talking about... I watched Ray Addison earlier out and about doing a news report from Crawley in the UK, and he was interviewing people to find out if the Brits kind of know who Kamala Harris is. And there were so many people saying, well, it would be nice to have a woman. And he'd say, why is that? And they didn't care. It was just
famous last words.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to have some Visigoths in the city.
I mean, to be fair, I would sooner have a woman president probably than a woman's Secret Service. You know, offering close protection. I mean, it is probably a job. You know?
Imagine if you had both.
I've seen Meryl Streep play a woman quite plausibly in a movie. A woman president, not a woman.
You're just being really, really catty.
I don't know how she did it. Must have been pristine.
I mean, when we've seen a number of female leaders, obviously, in Europe, it is odd that America is lagging behind because they're supposed... Well, that is the weird dichotomy with America. On the one hand, they're supposed to have swept away all the old ancien regime, inherited, wealth and power and so on. In reality, as a left-wing commentator said on Twitter today, this will be the first presidential election in 48 years not to feature either a Bush, a Clinton or Joe Biden.
Wow.
48 years, very nearly my adult lifetime. In fact, yes, my entire adult lifetime, because George Bush Jr. was, the senior rather, was Veep for Reagan.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they have... And in that regard as well, they are extraordinarily conservative. It's weird, but they are. Their clubs are more conservative.
Well, so some people are saying that's a vote for Kamala Harris because people are going to go for her purely because it'd be nice to have a woman.
Yeah.
But Farage, of course, is saying, he says, well, she's got a better chance of victory than Joe Biden on paper until the public actually see her.
Yeah.
And he's, well, this is the problem with DEI, isn't it? There's nothing wrong with having a black or woman or whatever, but they've got to be able to.
And he can't argue against it because it was quite blatantly made by him as that point. He was urged to hire a black woman and he said, yes, OK, well, let's do that.
They make a song and dance of it so that everybody knows exactly. Let it happen organically.
Because other people have said, she was a state, or California district attorney, and she's been a senator and so on. She has much more relevant experience than Trump had first time around. This time around, you could obviously say, well, he's been actual president. But, but there are a lot of people in American political life who give the appearance of having risen to... She's not alone in this. Yeah. And yet she seems to have only the kind of folksy wisdom that you would ascribe to a youth leader or something.
Yeah, she's incredibly good at hiding her talents. It really is incredible. And she's sort of representative of this left-wing embrace of woke ideology, so DEI, critical race theory, gender ideology. And I think what really gets your regular person's back up about it is it's inherently racist. The left are racist because they're judging people specifically on their identity, on their demographics, whether they're straight or gay or black or white or whatever it is. Whereas I think on the right, you see Margaret Thatcher rose to become, possibly the greatest conservative leader of, certainly modern times. And, it wasn't because she's a woman.
She did have to overcome some prejudice, of course. But once she was in, she was in. Yeah. Anyway, Leo, Donald Trump's even more acerbic assessment of what's really going on in the White House as well, even worse than Farage.
Yeah. So Donald Trump claims that Joe Biden doesn't have COVID and says he's a threat to democracy as Biden ends his re-election bid. So Donald Trump posted on Truth Social, which is his version of Twitter. I think he's the only person who really messaged on it. He says, Biden never had COVID. He's a threat to democracy. Does anybody really believe that Crooked Joe had COVID? He wanted to get out ever since June the 27th, the night of the debate, where he was completely obliterated by Donald. So this is interesting. This is this has been smeared as a far right conspiracy, like Biden being senile. That turned out to be absolutely.
Well, I mean, it would certainly be. Well, it'd be a stretch if they actually made up COVID to explain, but it wouldn't surprise me if they created some sort of cover, like a blanket, to wheel him off in.
Yeah. Simon, who hasn't pretended to have COVID in the last 4 years?
It's not that hard, is it? Exactly. The question is, did he go? I mean, was he struggling? That is the question, isn't it? Because I think there was a lot of indication that he was just not ready to go. Yeah. And the Democratic establishment decided to use what almost amounted to force.
Yeah, and it's incredible they couldn't do that before, because there's obviously a lot of people in the party wanted that to happen. And in fact, Biden, I think, originally said he was just going to be a one-term president and, restore order. Yeah. So it's. I mean, obviously, once you're in power, nobody ever really wants to let go of it.
Do you remember? George III. Remember George III? George III. The only reason I know it, I think it's quoted in Hamilton, the movie. I think that's where I learned about it. He said, if George Washington willingly gives up power after 2 terms or whatever it is, he will be the greatest man that ever lived. And of course, he did.
Right, yeah.
And that was the point at which, George III had to go, OK, fair play. Yeah. But they didn't have it as a legal requirement initially. Right. But, Washington stood down.
It'll be interesting to see if Trump goes back to these sort of emotive, abrasive attacks on Kamala and on other people, because I think that's
what's happened here.
Yeah, straight away when he has.
48 hours, you had a bit of a wobble, and then you had a cup of tea and a Twix.
He needs to get shot in the head every 2 days.
They, again, quoting, but Churchill's line, there is no greater thrill in life than to be shot at without result. Yeah. Daily Mail, Cressida, Kimberly Cheetle is under fire. With result, hopefully. But very incompetence, at least. I mean, extraordinary. No.
Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheetle doubles down on bizarre reason why agents weren't stationed where gunmen opened fire on Trump. So she's saying that they like a sterile rooftop. Yeah. I mean, yes, of course, but we wanted it to be sterile for the whole day. That was the idea. I totally get it. When I lived on my boat, I painted all the ceilings white, so if there was a spider, I could see it and then deal with it.
Wow.
But, it's brilliant. You know immediately what's there. So I get the sterile roof thing, but you've then got to act on it, haven't you? Because it wasn't sterile all day.
I mean, she is the weird thing is she's accepted responsibility. She's acknowledged it's the greatest failure of the service in decades. She said the buck stops with me.
And that's it. But I'm not doing it.
Should you not?
They said if he had been successful, if Trump had been killed, would you have stepped down? And she still wouldn't answer the question.
Extraordinary.
It's like that day-to-day sketch where it's like, you know, in 1990 nothing happened.
No deaths. Nobody drowned.
In 2024, a man was shot in the head. But it's, you know, there is this focus on DEI. There's been a lot of deflecting, people saying it's misogynist to say that, you know, it was because women were hired. I think there is the focus on DEI. It's not about hiring women or anything like that. It's the fact that DEI in itself draws attention away from core business. So instead of Kimberly Cheetle worrying about doing her job, she's worrying about hitting targets for female hires and all the rest of it. And that's what it is. It's almost a sort of corporatocracy, if that's a word, because she's not a Secret Service, you know, expert who's risen up through the ranks. She came from like PepsiCo or something, so she's an executive. She's just a corporate executive, you know, treating it like that.
Well, there is a lot of that. You know, I think that goes across a huge range, not just the Secret Service and government, but everything now has so many multiple considerations. The DEI is one of them. Obviously, net zero is a similar thing. There's so much confusion. Free market capitalism works pretty well when all you're trying to do is provide value for shareholders.
Yeah.
You know, if you know that's what your aims are, then it really focuses the mind tremendously well, you know, and you let Adam Smith take care of the rest of it. But we're not allowed to do that anymore. With nicked ears all round. So that's part 2 all done. In part 3, we've got a boxing burqa bust up. Jeremy Vine falls further in our collective estimation. And the N-word, can you say it? No, obviously you cannot. So we will be skirting around that shortly as well. See you there.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. For many, tomorrow looks like it's going to be a bit drier and a bit sunnier with that too. That being said, there will be some showery rain around. Most of today's showers are clearing away towards the east as we go overnight, but there is another system coming into the west and the southwest, and we are going to see further outbreaks of rain, which could be heavy, pushing across parts of Wales and also southwest England as we go overnight. Elsewhere, apart from a few showers towards the east-northeast, it's going to be largely dry, and there will be some clear skies around, but for many, another warm night. Temperatures, particularly in the towns and cities, holding up in the mid-teens Celsius. Some outbreaks of rain then first thing could be quite heavy across some southern parts first of all, originally around central southern parts, but the heavier bursts are going to push their way eastwards through the morning before clearing away. Elsewhere across much of England and Wales, a few showery bursts, but also some decent bright sunny weather first thing. Largely fine and sunny across Northern Ireland and many parts of northern England. Across Scotland, a bit of a west-east split. Around eastern areas, it's going to be a bit cloudier, a few outbreaks of rain here, likely to be drier, brighter across more central and western parts of Scotland. Through the day then, we are going to see a scattering of showers here or there. Many places will actually avoid the showers and stay largely dry, but a few showers are possible and they could be a little bit on the heavy side, though I'm not expecting any thunder like we've seen through today. With a bit more sunshine around, temperatures are going to be a bit higher than they have been lately. Temperatures reaching highs of around 24, 25 Celsius, possibly even 26 Celsius. Any showers will die out as we go through tomorrow night into Wednesday, and Wednesday looks like it will start mostly dry. We can expect some showery rain pushing its way through across parts of Scotland and perhaps some showers kicking off over eastern parts of England, but elsewhere it's looking largely fine yet again before some very wet weather pushes in, particularly across southern parts as we go through Thursday. See you later.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Leo, a riddle. Which jabs are banned in women's boxing?
So, France has banned hijabs at the Paris Olympics as boxer hits out at the rule. So this is Australian Muslim boxer Tina Rahimi, who wears a full hijab during bouts. I don't know how that works.
I mean, but how is full? Is that
No, not a niqab. Like, she can see.
Yeah.
Is that what you're getting at?
So is it like...
She has to walk 10 paces behind her opponent.
Is it just like a sort of, like a full-on swimming, you know, just like an elasticated
sometimes you
hood?
see Muslim ladies jogging in them.
Yeah.
The whole face is out.
I've seen Muslim women in the gym wearing like a full-on, like, you know, the full-on robe.
But it won't be across
I'm like, you're going to get dragged into the exercise bike in a moment.
Well, that's what I think in boxing as well. It's going to sort of like...
and you're going to
create a certain amount of drag.
Also, how can a boxer wear something that covers the head? Because that's going to provide some form of protection, or certainly, you know, it's going to change, you know, where you're aiming at and just the whole perception.
This isn't the reason, though, right? This is France, and they say it's a secular thing, isn't it?
Yeah, so other countries are allowed to participate in their hijabs. So she says, the Australian Muslim boxer says, thankfully, I'm still able to participate in my hijab, which I'm so grateful for. But it's so unfortunate for the athletes in France because it has nothing to do with their performance. It should not get in the way of you being an athlete. So the French athletes, because France is a secular country, or ostensibly a secular country, they've banned the hijab for the French athletes. And I think the hijabs are banned. Are they banned in France? Or they certainly had that discussion.
I think it depends what you're doing. There's religious garb of all kinds. If you're in public office, things like that.
Yes.
I think that's the point. You're supposed to be being French at that point before you're anything else.
And weirdly, Amnesty International, the human rights pressure group, have come out and said, you know, women need to be allowed to wear hijabs, you know, because it's their choice. And it's like, well, if it's their choice, how come it's only women from one particular culture choosing?
It seems to be a fairly unanimous choice being made. But that's the weird. I mean, that's the kind of. What can you call it? Like the incoherence, the cognitive dissonance in religion and everything, isn't it? Everyone thinks that they are making a free choice. You know, it's just weird. You very rarely get Jewish kids growing up in Hindu families and stuff. You know? It just seems to work out that way. Cressida, a sad story of cricketing castration in one of my local clubs as well, in the Telegraph.
Cricket club bans hitting sixes to save on insurance claims. So it's 2024, success is out, failure is in. You're not allowed to get a six in this cricket club.
2024 would be a terrible score for a two-innings match as well,
I don't get that joke. So this cricket club's been there since 1790, and apparently all the people around are delighted that these six... Well, not all of it, some of the people have been delighted. If you hit a six, I learn, that means the ball goes a long way.
Yeah.
And this is a small place.
You're sounding like Kamala Harris now.
Thank you very much.
Cricket is a game.
So this is it. We're not allowed to...
I mean, these houses and gardens and what have you, and a road, to be fair as well, they've arrived since the cricket ground was there. If you plonked a cricket ground in the middle of a suburban housing estate and then started breaking windows, that would be one thing. I think the people who move there probably enjoy some of the sort of reflected, you know, rural... The glory of, or the, you know, the sort of burnish of it.
Of cricket.
You know, exactly. They should put up with the occasional broken window thing.
Cricket club have been paying all the fees, and every time there's a broken window, they sort.
Well, that's what they say. I think they should just let the batsman pay. That would be the obvious thing, right? You take a risk. If you hit it out, you're...
Also, they'll be more careful about where they hit it. They'll try and hit that chimney instead of that window.
Just want to take it off the paintwork, but not destroy the wing mirror.
In fairness to the cricket club, so apparently modern bats are a lot more dynamic. I don't know what sort of willow or whatever it is they're using to create them with, but apparently they're far more dynamic, so they're hitting a lot more sixes than they used to. Used to be just like you get 1-4 in a whole
Don
match.
Bradman, I don't know if I think he famously didn't score a six in his entire career.
Right.
Would always play, because of course sixes you take the risk of being caught out.
Yeah.
But That is interesting. So the bats are a bit like tennis rackets, I suppose.
Yeah.
That would happen, wouldn't it? They use roughly the same sort of technology that they do for bows, I think, in archery. You know, it's that kind of...
So it's got some sort of tensile spring.
We'll have to look into that. Independent now, Leo, and a black woman has been charged for using a word in a tweet, very possibly... been listening to a black woman rapping it on her radio at the same moment. So.
So a black woman has been charged by the police after using the N-word on social media. I think we know what word it is, and I think we know, a lot of people are now saying it in their heads now that we've said the N-word, but we never say the actual word. We just say the word that makes you say it in your head.
We were saying earlier that we should call it the P word with a silent P, so as to stop people having to hear it in their heads.
Yeah.
So just call it...
It's the other word, the other bad word.
That's right.
So, this charge relates to a post on Twitter or X about Sweden and Newcastle footballer Alexander Isak. So Jamila Abdi, 21, was having a discussion about a football match on X and used the N-word to refer to this footballer. She said, "I'm so peed off, let me get my hands on that F-N..." And that's what it's not nice language, but I mean it's weird for it to be a criminal offence, particularly if she's black. The person she was talking to was black. I mean, I understand it's public and stuff, and you hear this word, you hear it on the BBC, you hear it in rap music.
I thought that was the rule. The black people were allowed to use it, and one would not dispute that rule, because even though it's obviously ridiculous and incoherent, to dispute it gives the impression that you feel deprived of the right to use it, and you would otherwise like to. And I don't want to give that impression, nor is that the correct impression. I don't even sound it out in my head. But this seems to be like in contravention of that idea as well, right? Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's ongoing, isn't it? But it's more likely that prosecution is required if the offence was motivated by any form of prejudice, and that's highly unlikely, isn't it, in this case? Because, as you said, everybody involved shares the same characteristics.
She could have internalised whiteness or whatever you call it.
That's a very good point. I hadn't thought of that. But roughly speaking, I think I'd rather see the police out and about looking at burglars.
Yes, that might be an interesting development. Cressida, we have boffin news now, and we've all learned to take mice-based research with a pinch of salt, but The Guardian have a new wrinkle on that.
Why sex bias in labs means women are the losers in research into ageing. So it turns out that all the research into these anti-ageing things, it's all on male mice. It doesn't say why male mice. I would have thought if you had a box of mice...
Because the women are kept for the milking. It's like the dairy trade. The young male mice are taken off to the labs and the women just carry on.
There you go.
If they're anything like gerbils, which are also used in labs a lot. In fact, I think that originally they were used in labs before they became pets. People realised they're so friendly that they make excellent pets. Yeah. So the male ones are larger and they're less skittish than the female ones. So
it's a bit of a red pill, that as well, though, isn't it? Oh, it's always the male rats that end up getting the poison because they have no. Apparently.
Yeah, we got to remember this isn't a good thing for the male mice. They're the ones that locked up and experimented on.
But what they're saying is then that they're going to discover or possibly miss possible cures for ageing.
Yes, because they're saying that
won't apply to women.
And broadly, it could be all sorts of medical things.
I'm amazed they haven't gone for race, because I bet they're white mice as well, aren't they? Anyway, Telegraph, Leo, we're going to squeeze this one in. Not the most annoying remark I've heard Jeremy Vine make. At least he doesn't have any taxis contravening the highway code in it.
So Jeremy Vine has been criticised over a social media post about the Biden family's fatal car crash. He used the N-word. No, he didn't. Other stories. So this is the radio presenter compares the president's decision to quit the US election race with the deaths of his wife and daughter in a 1972 accident. So writing on Twitter or X.
And including the pictures.
Jeremy Vine.
Bizarrely.
Oh, he's got the pictures as well.
I mean,
he's put in hospital pictures.
I mean, this is weird. So what he said was a bad day for Joe Biden, but this one in 1972 must have been worse. Soon after he was first elected Delaware senator, a car crash killed his wife and infant daughter and badly hurt his two sons. He was sworn in at their bedside in hospital. I mean, that's a weird thing to
It's such a weird connection. I assume Vine is trying to say, look at the span of this man's political career. Right. He's been around forever. He showed extraordinary fortitude and and command of his emotions to be sworn in as senator in this horrible... I assume that's the message. But none of that comes across. It just seems plain ghoulish.
I think you should write his tweets for him. The way this is going, his only option is, oh, sorry, I was hacked. Or possibly we're going to see, like, a mental health issue coming out in the next few days. I mean, it's really weird.
He's going to do a Biden. He's going to say, I've got COVID, I'm down.
I'll tell you what I think is actually going on, like, to be a bit Freudian about it. I think Vine is trying to demonstrate his own grasp and reach and span of political acumen, that he himself knows and remembers and had that, you know, available to him to think, oh, my goodness, I remember, you know. He's trying to demonstrate that he's a real player just because he's on Radio 2 and mainly seen arguing in a fisheye lens with a delivery dispatch driver. He's hoping to get back on Panorama. Anyway, that's the 3/4 done. Just one more to come. The RSPCA take on Gen Z chimpanzees, get chatting, and why it's acceptable to shoplift if you're suitably middle-class posh totty. We'll see you in a couple of minutes. See you then.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Should Prince Harry have accepted an award named after a US war hero at a glitzy ceremony last night? People begged him not to, but he did it anyway. It's time for tonight's head-to-head. Well, Prince Harry paid tribute to the eternal bond between mother and son as he appeared alongside his wife, Meghan Markle, at the glitzy ESPY Awards, dubbed the Sporting Oscars last night. The Duke accepted the Pat Tillman Award, named after a US war hero, for his Invictus Games work. But Harry's decision to accept the award was shrouded in controversy after more than 76,000 people signed a petition demanding he reverse his decision. Well, speaking last night, Harry paid tribute to Pat Tillman's mother, Mary. But that comes after Mary Tillman slammed his decision to give Prince Harry the gong, saying, I am shocked as to why they would select such a controversial and divisive individual to receive the award. There are recipients that are far more fitting. These individuals do not have the money, resources, connections or privilege that Prince Harry has. So tonight I'm asking, should Harry have actually accepted the award? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/yoursay. Tweet me at GBNews and make sure you take part in our poll. But going head-to-head on this now, a former royal butler, Grant Harold, and the journalist and broadcaster, Laurie Turner. Thank you very much. Great to have you both on the show. Laurie, I will start with you. I mean, the mother didn't want Harry to have it, but he did it anyway. What do you think?
I just think it's incredibly tone deaf. He seems to have an amazing ability to not read the room. It wasn't like this was a surprise because the opposition to him getting this award had been growing. So he had the chance to say, actually, I hear what you're saying. I'm not going to accept the award. But he didn't.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners for the final quarter, where things get a little wacky on occasion. Cressida, the Daily Mail have the latest outrage committed by the real threat to society, Posh Totty.
Rise of the Posh Totty shoplifters. Organic food chain security boss claims brazen middle-class customers feel entitled to steal because they are regulars who spend a lot of money. That seems very reasonable to me.
Yeah.
So this guy I mean, there's a bit of projection going on here because I don't think he's interviewed them and got this feedback. They haven't said this themselves. But Richard Fowler, who manages security at an upmarket health food brand Planet Organic, said shoplifting at the Chiswick branch takes place every day. And he divides it. He says we've got the problem of the homeless people, like as if that's half the problem, and the other half is these middle-class people. And because they spend so much money, they think they're entitled to take stuff.
But he honestly has no idea, does he? I mean, if he knew that's who it was, then he would stop them.
Yeah, and also he's making up that motive in his head. It could not. I mean, I occasionally shoplift when it's justified, because sometimes you go to the shops and like this happens a lot. They do reverse shoplifting on you. So something's supposed to be on offer or whatever, and it goes through at full price. And I'm not going to go and queue up and say, "Oh, can you get the 40 pence?" No,
so you put the other one in your pocket.
I'm just like supermarket sweep. And then I'm like,
you're so middle class now.
I had a mate. This is true. I don't know if I should say this, but he genuinely did this. He removed barcode from a cheap bottle of wine and would just surreptitiously palm it onto an expensive bottle of wine and then scan it and put it in. And of course, they would still have to come and clear it for age.
Yeah. I draw my own barcodes at home with a
It appeared to be trying to buy mammoth steaks. Anyway, the inevitable next stage in the pathological trend of the fur baby now in the mail.
So the RSPCA has slammed the Gen Z, or Gen Z if you're American, social media trend of putting cats on leads and taking them for a walk. So a number of TikTok users have recently posted videos of themselves taking their cats out for walks while the animal wears a harness and a lead. And owners apparently fear that the animal will get injured if they allow them to roam free. Yeah. But animal experts say that this can actually stress out the cat because the collar takes away a cat's control. And I've heard people say this about dogs as well. Obviously, it's, it happens a lot with dogs. Yeah. But dogs are more likely to fight if they're on a lead because they don't feel safe. They don't feel that they can get away.
Well, that's interesting that you say they don't feel safe. There's lots of videos, and it's quite comical, when two dogs who feel that they're restrained go at each other, and then and then they're like, oh, no. I mean, I have a dog. I have a big golden retriever, and he's very gentle, but occasionally another dog's aggression will arouse that in him. And it can all happen incredibly quickly. They're playing a little bit, and then suddenly whoosh, and you've got to dive in and get them off. But, you have them in a harness, but release them.
Yeah, but that never happens with cats. This is just stupid.
No,
this is just people that can't afford a house and have a baby and all the kind of real life milestones making it up, which is very sad. And,
I think cats are a little bit like bowling shoes, shouldn't be really seen out. You shouldn't be seen outdoors with them,
Such a big moneymaker. The humanisation of pets is massive.
Yeah,
so why wouldn't you make cat harnesses and then tell people they need them?
Yeah.
But no, I'm very cynical.
Have a matching harness on your end as well. There's some people go jogging with their dogs on sort of like belted harnesses and an extended lead and all this. You're right, it is a bit sad. It is a little. It's I think a pet is a great thing, but. I mean, we've got a cat and a dog. I've encountered our cat occasionally on the street, like 3 or 4 doors away from our house, and it's always really awkward. Neither of us want to say it. It's like meeting your teacher in a pub, Cressida studies at St Andrews in chimpanzee conversations. They suggest they're vastly more constructive and mutually respectful than a lot of the ones I get to enjoy at home.
Amazing similarities between chimpanzee and human conversations study. It's just so funny, isn't it? We all work with Lewis. But chimpanzees in the wild take it in turns to speak. We should get them in for a training session for headliners. Yeah. during conversations in the same way humans do, not the ones I know. So it turns out there's these breaks in conversation, tiny in a human conversation, like a fifth of a second. Chimpanzees, it varies, but the point is they still have these breaks and they take in information and... Surprise, surprise, we're related.
I would be really interested to know whether chimps have an innate sense of when the other chimp has talked enough and it's time for me to cut. Because I get that very strongly and I don't think I'm alone. Do you know what I mean? That kind of...
we've been meaning to speak to you.
I always want to say... I want to see the dialogue on the page. If you've gone over a whole page... I don't know. Do you think we're like chimps, or is this?
Yeah, I think as long as you're not throwing your faeces at the other person.
Yeah, well, that only happens in captivity as
well.
well.
Oh, really? When they're on a lead?
And not just faeces, of course, the other stuff.
Right.
That's another thing they only do in captivity.
Well, there's more variation in the chimps than us, apparently.
It's
from something like 1/8 of a second up to several seconds.
Oh, I thought you meant genetically or whatever within the chimp
Probably
family.
that as well, I imagine.
The other thing about chimps is they're famously ripped, right? Somebody posted a picture of them without the hair.
It's not so much the sort of size of the muscles, but they're tethered to the bone further along, so the lever is much more powerful.
So that's always got to be hanging over any conversation, haven't it?
Oh, they can rip you apart. They can rip you apart.
Finally, Leo, a think piece in the paper I actually do think I can relate to, the death of holidays. You've got about 30 seconds.
So whatever happened to the do-nothing, switch-off holiday? Apparently people are going on a holiday and they have iPads on the table, they're taking work calls, they're talking about spreadsheets and frowning at their phones, so people aren't having a proper break. They're still working on holiday, which I plan to do on holiday.
Yeah, you are going to work on holiday, or you're going to take it off, What do you do, Chris?
Well, it's all mixed in, isn't it? WhatsApp, everybody knows if you've been on, you can't ignore it. They can see when you're there. Terrible. Why do we have WhatsApp? Get rid of that.
I can't relax if I haven't worked.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I find the most relaxing thing is to be engaged in constructive work, not to be badgered, by superiors. That's the difference.
You haven't got any superiors.
The show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Tuesday's front pages. The Daily Mail. Now Labour opens door to giving asylum to 70,000. The Guardian. Senior Democrats throw weight behind Harris to take on Trump. The Times. Donor dollars pour in as Harris promises victory. The Express. Farage, more Tory MPs will soon defect to reform. The iNews has Kamala as the anointed. And finally, the Daily Star, asparagus psychic next president will be Michelle Obama. Those were your front pages, and that's all we have time for tonight. Thank you to my guests, Cressida and Leo. We're back tomorrow at 11 p.m. with some other people, I'm not sure who. But if you've been watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, thank you very much for your company. Good night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. For many, tomorrow looks like it's going to be a bit drier and a bit sunnier with that too. That being said, there will be some showery rain around. Most of today's showers are clearing away towards the east as we go overnight, but there is another system coming into the west and the southwest, and we are going to see further outbreaks of rain, which could be heavy, pushing across parts of Wales and also southwest England as we go overnight. Elsewhere, apart from a few showers towards the east-northeast, it's going to be largely dry, and there will be some clear skies around, but for many, another warm night. Temperatures, particularly in the towns and cities, holding up in the mid-teens Celsius. Some outbreaks of rain then first thing could be quite heavy across some southern parts first of all, originally around central southern parts, but the heavier bursts are going to push their way eastwards through the morning before clearing away. Elsewhere across much of England and Wales, a few showery bursts, but also some decent bright sunny weather first thing. Largely fine and sunny across Northern Ireland and many parts of northern England. Across Scotland, a bit of a west-east split. Around eastern areas, it's going to be a bit cloudier, a few outbreaks of rain here, likely to be drier, brighter across more central and western parts of Scotland. Through the day then, we are going to see a scattering of showers here or there. Many places will actually avoid the showers and stay largely dry, but a few showers are possible and they could be a little bit on the heavy side, though I'm not expecting any thunder like we've seen through today. With a bit more sunshine around, temperatures are going to be a bit higher than they have been lately. Temperatures reaching highs of around 24, 25 Celsius, possibly even 26 Celsius. Any showers will die out as we go through tomorrow night into Wednesday, and Wednesday looks like it will start mostly dry. We can expect some showery rain pushing its way through across parts of Scotland and perhaps some showers kicking off over eastern parts of England, but elsewhere it's looking largely fine yet again before some very wet weather pushes in, particularly across southern parts as we go through Thursday. See you later.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Charles was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly, you've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
A very, very good evening to you and welcome to GBN Tonight with me, Martin Daubney. It's all over for Joe Biden as he announced he's pulled out of the US presidential race this year. Who will face Donald Trump? Can anybody beat him? Well, it's looking like it will be Biden's Vice President Kamala Harris. She spoke just moments ago and paid tribute to her boss. More on that later. We've also got the lowdown on Kamala from Tom Del Beccaro, who ran against Kamala Harris to be Senator for California. Also today, Labour launched Skills England. They say it'll end the reliance on overseas workers, but with the Chancellor warning of tough decisions ahead, is the honeymoon period already over for the new government? Also, a new study reveals there were more than 1 million asylum seeker applications in the European Union last year alone. Why? We'll talk to a top immigration lawyer on that one. And blame it on the European Union. No, they're not the words of Nigel Farage, but Microsoft. The tech giant is pointing the blame at Brussels over last week's IT blackout. I was never a fan. Vladimir Putin would have been proud of that wipeout. Was actually that down to Brussels? Now get in touch with your thoughts on tonight's topics by visiting gbnews.com/your-say. But for a meaty following hour, here's your news with Polly Middlehurst.
Martin, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the head of the US Secret Service today admitted that the attempt to assassinate Donald Trump was the most significant operational US Secret Service failure for decades. Kimberly Cheetle has been testifying today before a congressional committee in an effort to explain herself following the attempt to kill Donald Trump last week. She was being questioned today about the security lapses that allowed a lone gunman to successfully take aim at Mr. Trump, saying she accepts full responsibility.
The assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump on July 13th is the most significant operational failure of the Secret Service in decades, and I am keeping him and his family in my thoughts. The Secret Service's solemn mission is to protect our nation's leaders. On July 13th, we failed.
Meanwhile, financial donations to the US Democrats have surged after President Biden's announcement he's stepping down from the US presidential race. In an online statement yesterday, Joe Biden endorsed his VP Vice President Kamala Harris as his favourite candidate for president. But similar endorsements were missing from the former President Obama and the prominent Democrat Nancy Pelosi. It comes after he faced increasing calls to step aside since his poor debate performance against Donald Trump last month. Here, though, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, praised Joe Biden.
A man who, during 5 decades of service, never lost touch with the concerns of working people and always put his country first. A true friend of the Labour movement, his presidency will leave a legacy that extends far beyond America to freedom and security on this continent.
Well, the Home Secretary told the House of Commons today that the Rwanda scheme has cost the British taxpayer £700 million. Yvette Cooper described the migrant deterrence scheme as the most shocking waste of taxpayers' money she'd ever seen. She said she would take urgent action to start clearing the asylum backlog in one simple change that she said would save the taxpayer an estimated £7 billion over the next 10 years. That's after nearly 1,500 migrants arrived in the UK over the last week across the English Channel. And just lastly, the Prince and Princess of Wales have shared a new photograph of Prince George to mark his 11th birthday. The image was taken by his mum, Princess Catherine, and posted on Kensington Palace's social media accounts. The black and white shot shows the future king smiling, wearing a white shirt and a dark blazer. Very grown-up looking he is too. Happy birthday, George. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. I'm back in an hour. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Polly. Now, welcome to GBN Tonight. I'm Martin Daubney. Well, it finally happened. After weeks of insisting he was still fit to lead, Joe Biden has finally dropped out of the 2024 presidential race. His Vice President Kamala Harris has thrown her hat in the ring. And last night, the Bidens and the Clintons both endorsed a last-minute campaign to take on Donald Trump in November. And let's cross now to Middletown, Ohio, where Trump's Vice President candidate J.D. Vance is speaking in his hometown at his first solo rally.
My grandmother, I could tell stories about my mom and my sister. I could tell stories about Aunt Wee. I know Aunt Wee's here. We've got so many great, I think all those people here, actually. I think Cheryl, where's Cheryl? You here, Cheryl? I love you, Cheryl. My stepmom. We just got so many good people who've been so good to me. But even if you cast a wider net, you know, Ron Selby was my math teacher in high school. Ron's got to be around here somewhere. I know he is. Now, I will tell a story. Now, I don't know if this story is actually true or if it's just the legend of Ron Selby. But Ron, if it's not true, don't tell me, because I've gone 21 years believing it, and I don't want to be contradicted now. But you know, the story is that at some point, Ron, of course, was a tough teacher. He demanded a lot of his students, and I was a beneficiary of that. But the story goes that at one point, Ron Selby had a student who really didn't want to take one of those world-famous Ron Selby math final exams. And so somebody called in a bomb threat to Middletown, Ohio school. So everybody goes outside, of course. Everybody remembers, it was a student at one point or another. You get a bomb threat, you got to go stand outside. The fire department comes. But Ron was really pissed off that somebody was messing with his schedule. So he walked over, He walked to the kid's locker, got what was allegedly the bomb, threw it in a trash can and said, I know this kid, he's not smart enough to make a bomb. Let's get back to school. That's the legend of Ron Selby. I could go through half an hour and longer just talking about so many of you who made me who I am, and I'm so grateful to you. And I said at the RNC convention, which was the craziest speech and the craziest environment I've ever given, it's like all of you times 100 people, right? They were just as excited as you guys are times about 100 people. You could barely hear yourself think, but I said, I will never forget where I came from. Ladies and gentlemen, I came from Middletown, Ohio. I am proud of it, and I will never forget where I came from. And in fact, I might make the Secret Service take me to Central Pastry afterwards to get some. I'm dead serious. They get nervous. They do not like unexpected. And I love Milton's too, of course. Both. I love both. But Milton's has expanded a little bit. I feel like you can get Milton's not just at the place that's there on what is that, Roosevelt? I feel like you can get Milton's anywhere now, or at least a lot of other places, so it's cast a wider net. Anyway, I'm gonna talk about donuts all day. You can tell what I skipped lunch, so my mind's on donuts here. But I'll tell you another story. My mamaw was just an incredible woman, and a lot of you knew her, and a lot of you knew her personally. And I talked at the RNC convention, and I'll repeat this story just because I think it illustrates how tough she was. That, Mamaw died in 2005, and I was a United States Marine at that point, and I was just about to leave for Iraq. And when Aunt Wee and the rest of us went through her things, they discovered 19 loaded handguns in Mamaw's. That is not a made-up, no, that's. That's right, that's right. Well, when she introduced herself, sir, she is an Appalachian American, and when she introduced herself to my uncle, my Aunt Wee's husband, for the first time, she said, I'm from Breathitt County, Kentucky, where a woman isn't fully dressed without her gun. So that was Mamaw's attitude. And she was tough. And she was disciplined, and she is the reason why I've had so many of the good opportunities that I've had in my life. But people don't realize she was an incredibly sweet and kind and caring person too. And I'll never forget, I was probably 10 or 11 years old, and she picked me up from school, and there was just this very, I'd never seen this person. She was probably 14 or 15, young girl who was sitting in the back of the car, and she was clearly a little freaked out. And I'm gonna get emotional telling this story. And I don't think that I've ever told this story before, but, Mamaw said, I said, who is this person, who's in our car? And Mamaw said, don't worry about it, none of your business. And I said, okay, I'll shut up. And eventually we dropped her off, and then we went back home, and I asked Mamaw, well, who was that? And she said, well, that was a little girl, and I guess there was some pretty bad abuse in her house. And when that little girl ran away from home and tried to find a safe space, she asked, where could I go? And everybody said, you can go to Bonnie Vance's house. And that is the Mamaw, but that is the Middletown that I knew. You guys were always so good to me. I could talk about any number of public school teachers, from Ron Selby to a number of others. I could talk about...
And that's J.D. Vance, the Vice President nominee, Vice President candidate, speaking at his first hometown rally in Middletown, Ohio. I will never forget where I came from. We'll cut back to that later on when it gets juicy. But let's move on now to earlier events in the day. And joining me now to discuss this is the author and the former Republican candidate for the US Senate in California, Tom Del Beccaro. Hello, welcome to the show. No, it's not that. We're joined now by the Democratic strategist, Hank Sheinkopf. Hank, welcome to the show. Right, I guess it's time. Right, so the big question is, can anybody beat Donald Trump? Kamala Harris has been polling significantly behind Joe Biden even. Donald Trump very rambunctious, as you'd imagine, today, saying Harris will be easier to beat than Donald Trump. What's your take?
My take is that nobody can beat him today, but who knows what the future holds. 5 minutes in politics, as you certainly know in the UK, is 5 years in anything else, and anything can happen here. It's a long time until Election Day.
And what do you think we can expect from Kamala Harris? We were a bit disappointed today. She gave a speech on the steps at the White House. We were expecting the big-ticket sales device. We didn't get it, but we did have a little whiff earlier of the direction she might go in. She's painting herself, the former California Attorney General, as the good guy, taking down the bad guy, Donald Trump. The statement said, Kamala Harris stands up to fraudsters and criminals. Donald Trump is a convicted felon. It looks like the kinder politics, the unity politics, Hank, lasted approximately 1 week.
Well, even less, because yesterday or the day before, was it yesterday before when Joe Biden said, I'm out, Donald Trump attacked him almost immediately, which set a different tenor for the campaign. Kamala Harris's problem, she's got to establish herself as someone who can be the commander-in-chief, the most powerful person in the universe. She's got to make people believe she can do the job. She's also got to put Democrats together, and they are in the United States. Like much of what has happened in the UK over the last few years, there are a bunch of clans or small groups who are fighting for some kind of power, and they're not sure what they stand for. That's problem 2. Problem 3, she's not believable on the migrant issue. And what Donald Trump will do is he will play her clips, what she said about migrants and immigrants, which is a big thing right now in the States and in the UK. It's a serious, serious issue. How is she going to get past this? What will happen is the Democrats will somewhat coalesce. There won't be chaos in Chicago at the convention if they can tolerate it. But the real reason they did this, because they would have lost both the Senate and they would have lost the House. They would have had no shot at taking back the House. And the shadow leader in the House, Hakeem Jeffries, and the leader in the Senate, the Democrat, Chuck Schumer, knew it. They acted swiftly, and they're putting coalitions together and telling their members, stand up for Kamala if you know what's good for you.
And Hank, do you think it's possible that she could do it? I mean, so far, she hasn't even been endorsed by Nancy Pelosi. She hasn't been endorsed by the Democrat kingmaker, the guy who many are saying is responsible for Joe Biden finally seeing sense and standing down. That man, of course, is Barack Obama, conspicuous by his silence.
I agree with you, and I think what they're doing here is what many politicians do, and you've certainly covered them. They're doing the dance, and it's kind of like Broadway or the West End, where the theater is opened. They're going to dance their way to a notoriety when and if they feel it's correct to keep the show going. Not a bad tactic. It keeps the excitement going. I think today Nancy Pelosi just now endorsed her, and we're going to see more Democrats stand up and say, by the way, let's be unified. And they're going to do it over the next week, would be my hunch.
Okay, superb. Thanks for joining us. Hank Scheinkoff, always a pleasure to have your company. Now, joining me now is the author and former Republican candidate for the US Senate in California, a man who stood against Kamala Harris, Tom Del Beccaro. Tom, welcome to the show. So you've stood against Kamala Harris. You've got the war wounds to prove it. Do you think she'd be a competent candidate? Do you think things could get dirty? Tell us more.
Well, a couple of thoughts here. It's one thing to be considered a possible candidate. It's a whole other world to be the actual candidate with the whole world focused on you. Her interviews will go up from a couple a day to many a day. And quite honestly, she doesn't think well on her feet. She, in the debates I had with her actually in California, which is very lopsided to the Democrat, I won the after debate poll. Because she couldn't answer questions, and I do better in that format, I guess. But number one, she's going to have to deal with a lot of press. Number two, she's never really run a campaign. And what do I mean by that? She was installed as the DA of San Francisco by Willie Brown. She ran unopposed for Attorney General. And then when she ran for U.S. Senate, she ran unopposed and didn't really have to work that hard. And then she ran for president, but did she really? Because I actually was the first to predict she wouldn't even make the gate and get into Iowa at all. She never entered any primaries. So now, in a crash course way, she is going to have to run for president with the whole world on her across the United States. So she's not particularly experienced at doing this sort of thing.
And Tom, her record, she was in charge of that southern border, the most porous border in all of America's history. The true numbers, I don't suppose we'll ever know, between 8 and 11 million estimated to have come through on Joe Biden's watch. So that's one automatic failure. And Tom, she's often lambasted for her word salads, the way she gives her delivery. Is this somebody that can actually get on point and take on Donald Trump? I mean, Joe Biden, for all of his failings, at least he had the backbone, that, he had that credence, that belief. Kamala Harris in a TV debate with Donald Trump, it would be a massacre, wouldn't it?
Well, it's funny. The left of center media here are lionizing her, saying, oh, she's an ex-prosecutor, she's going to be great at this. But actually, she isn't great on her feet. She does have problems. She also is on record for saying she wants to get rid of the Senate filibuster. So these are the reasons she has a 35% approval rating, which was lower than Biden's. And so they can try and blow her up as being so amazing, take her resume and create it, into an amazing thing. That's what I mean, like blow up like on the screen and make her a star. But her actual reality of what she's done over the years is how she got to a 35% approval rating. Remember, even the Democrats in the primary didn't like her. So it's not as if she has this great track record and now she has to do it in a compressed way.
Tom, what's astonishing today, as well as painting herself as the cowboy in the white hat against the cowboy in the black hat, Donald Trump, she's also saying she's going to attack Donald Trump on his age. That's an astonishing thing to think, whereas until yesterday she was supporting Joe Biden. Nothing to see here, no drama about his age. Is that another example of the inconsistency? And the bigger question, Tom, is do you think the Democratic Party have been complicit in covering up for Joe Biden's deterioration?
Well, remember 4 years ago, he ran from the basement. He's been having troubles for years. And of course, they have known this. And the enabler in chief, as Trump calls her, has been hiding who she was, hiding who Biden was for a very long time. This went from the day after his inauguration. There's a famous scene of him signing executive orders where he says, what am I signing? And she says, just sign there. So what else do you need to know? But yes, it's silly for him to, unless she does it in a joking manner, say, well, he's much older than me. But if that's their serious line of attack, then no, they're not going to get very far, because other than the very hard left base, no one buys that. They see Trump's energy. He just survived this attack, stood up with his arms. But you know what? In America, we say they throw everything, but including the kitchen sink. They're going to have to throw everything at Trump, because nothing they have so far has worked.
Well, they've tried the law, they've tried an assassination attempt. Maybe the kitchen sink is the last weapon in the locker. Tom Del Picaro, thanks for joining us on the show. Always a pleasure. Thank you. Now, coming up, as the Chancellor Rachel Reeves warns of tough decisions lying ahead, is Labour preparing for bombshell tax rises later this year? If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives. Again, down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said storm. You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect And then you throw me into the mix, and trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Tonight with me, Martin Daubney. Now, we're just a few weeks into the new Labour government and already the sun is setting on that brief honeymoon period. Yesterday, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, warned of tough spending decisions lying ahead in the approach to the autumn statement. And with the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, expected to sign off on above-inflation pay rises for nurses and teachers, the questions I'm asking tonight are, where is this money coming from? And will today's Skills England announcements make any difference whatsoever to the UK workforce? Well, joining me now in the studio to discuss this is the former Labour Party advisor and political commentator Matthew Torbett. Matthew, welcome to the show. Isn't the big problem is quite simple. The biscuit tin is empty. £2.7 trillion in national debt. And lo and behold, Rachel Reeves today, we're in the worst economic inheritance since World War II. She's already blaming the Conservatives. And this has all of the hallmarks of some painful tax rises coming. Pay rises, bumper pay rises to teachers and NHS staff. Is going to cost $3 billion every year. They're also talking today about the 2-child limit. That's another £3.4 billion a year. That's a lot of red ink on the ledger sheets. Where is the money coming from?
Well, the money tends to come from either rises in taxes or cuts to public spending. Now, considering public services, considering there isn't much of local authority spending and public services left to cut, you can only assume there's going to be some level of tax rises. I've always thought it would be politically sensible and savvy to raise capital gains tax. Rachel Reeves actually wrote as a backbencher in a 2018 paper that she would like to see it rise to the levels of income tax. I think if she did that, it brings in about 18 billion quid. So if you want to talk about things like the 2-child cap, that's just over 3 billion. You want to pay the public sector workers the suggested inflation-busting pay rises that have been suggested by an independent body, that's 5.5 billion. You've got change to spare. And only 3 in 100 people currently pay capital gains tax at the current rate.
But isn't the problem we've seen historically, if you squeeze the pips out of the rich, they clear off? In the 1970s, when the Labour government had sky-high taxes, people like the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, they went to America, they never came back. The benchmark was set. Those who pay the most tax are unlikely to passively sit around and just take it.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting taxing the pips off people, but I think I'm always a believer in the strong helping the weak. And currently, you think about during the COVID pandemic, we had Amazon, supermarkets, Uber even to an extent, making mass profits everywhere. They've got by on what they've done up to now. The idea that there's places like supermarkets are still...
But they're international corporations. If you tax them out of the UK, they'll clear off abroad. We live in a globalised world, the kind of world that Sir Keir Starmer loves.
I agree, but when we've got an economy that's 80% service-based, I don't think they'll clear off at all. This is a huge market for people still. And I think, you know, the idea that we're not going to have an Amazon in this country or these companies that do well, that are huge, you know, conglomerates. I don't think will be the case. And I think they've done well to cosy up to business enough that they can get away with it.
What we could do is lower taxes. We could lower corporation taxes. Saw it in the Republic of Ireland. We've seen it in Cyprus. Brexit was meant to give us that ability to be nimble. That might attract investment in, so the tax take will be bigger, rather than increasing taxes and forcing people offshore. But that's not likely anytime soon, is it? Because Sir Keir Starmer is flashing his garter to the European Union every single day.
Well, Keir's very upfront about the fact that he was, a huge Europhile, and I think in many cases it's sensible to have a good relationship with the EU. How close that is will remain to be seen. And, you know, I was always a believer, as a sort of reluctant Remainer, that I'd have been happy with things like EEA. I think why shoot yourself in the foot economically when you can leave the framework as it is? I think in an ideal world, everyone would like to lower taxes, but also, without sounding like a Conservative backbencher, the COVID pandemic has taken a huge hit to the public finances, and we've got to be straight up about that.
They were tax rises that Sir Keir Starmer wanted more of. He wanted sooner lockdowns, harder lockdowns, longer lockdowns. Isn't that the point? You know, we've driven the economy to near bankruptcy through those lockdowns. Sir Keir Starmer was a big part of it. And now the only way back is tax rises, precisely what the Labour Party's critics warned would happen.
Yeah, but you've got to be clever with the tax rises. I've also seen Rachel Reeves apparently moot the idea of using pension pots to invest in long-term infrastructure plans, which I think is sensible because, you know, pension plans...
Nationalising the rails, that could be like 190 billion.
Yeah, but again, they're trying to do it sensibly, I think, where you're letting whereas Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell would have bought them straight back in and it would have cost an absolute fortune, you're letting the contracts run out, you're letting them not go out to tender and just bringing them back in-house. It saves a lot of money in the process.
Well, let's talk about Sir Keir Starmer's Skills England package today to tackle Britain's fragmented and broken skills training system. It stops short of Gordon Brown's British Jobs for British Workers manifesto pledge in 2009. But isn't the problem we have too much unskilled labour in Britain from immigrants coming in? And they're the ones who are doing the farm-picking jobs, manufacturing jobs. We haven't got a problem with skilled labour. We've got a huge problem with unskilled labour in huge amounts, and that's what's bankrupted the working classes.
I think that there's an element of that. I think... we don't have a problem at times with skilled workers because, as I've said earlier, there's no industry left. You know, we see industries of a bygone era like steel in Wales just dying a death. I think if we're going to look at this long-term skills issue so that we're not reliant on migrant labour or whatever the politics Labour want to play with it is, there needs to be the right sort of skills and it needs to be looking at long term. So what do we need for the future? We need skills of people that know how to build AI and harness that. We need skills in renewable and green energy, looking at cheaper bills, which GBNews will probably be a big part of.
Well, we had £190 bill rises promised today. I spoke to a Labour minister on energy last week. £300 drops in energy prices we were promised through cheap renewable energy and 650,000 jobs. Still no indication where those jobs are, what they'll pay or how you qualify for them. Isn't all this just, it sounds great, but it's just going to take too long to train up a workforce?
It's going to take time, which is why I think they've also rolled the pitch to talk about a decade of renewal. Keir Starmer's very well aware this isn't going to happen overnight. It's not going to even happen in a first term. It's going to take 2 terms minimum. And to enable to gain the patience of the public to buy into your ideas, you've got to let them know up front, which I think they are doing. I think the other problem is we talk about low-skilled. I think what we actually mean is low-wage. Like, this is what these sort of jobs are. The thing where I get worried, regardless of who the government is, how long is it until we're all low-skilled? If you look at things like Uber, whose whole mission statement is to have driverless cars, and people say AI is the future, it's here, it's happening, it's not the future, it's the present. How long until, you know, we've got people presenting the news that are AI, or we're getting a job? Some people may agree, not myself, I promise. But and how long is it until we're all seen as unskilled labour? And those qualifications we've got to gain are basically meaningless, and that's what worries me more about how does Labour harness AI. And there's a lot of talk about regulation. How are they going to ensure that happens?
How will AI help people that used to vote Labour many, many years ago? Like, I'm from Nottinghamshire, from the coal belt. So they were decimated by the influx of unskilled labour. Wages were driven down. The left used to stand up for a good, fair working wage for British workers. That's long gone because the Labour Party became addicted to cheap foreign labour. There's nothing that we've seen so far in terms of cutting down on that scale of immigration from Sir Keir Starmer. But perhaps we'll see it. Do we believe in miracles?
I don't know. I think regardless of who it is, I've always had a fear that the robots will take the jobs, right? It's happening, whether it be in supermarkets, whether it be on telephone sort of things. It's happening. And we have a choice to make as a society, whether you provide for people, whether that be through some sort of basic income or something where people are still feeling the benefits in their pockets but getting the benefit of technology.
So that's a big state. This is classic socialism. The Labour Party wants to expand the state, robots to take over, and you'll pay everyone to not work. That's what got us in this mess during lockdowns.
The alternative is what? Is probably some element of neo-feudalism, where the 0.1%...
What does that mean for people who haven't swallowed a dictionary?
Well, anyone that owns anything, which will be the real top earners, we live off the land. We pay to live off the land. There's no jobs left. So, what else do? You've got to just pay... You work to survive, which is arguably what many people are out there doing now. So I think you make sure that all people are covered. You get rid of the welfare state. You need just ensuring people are getting a decent standard of living. That's where I fear that we'll head in the next 30 to 40 years.
A bright future of living off the farms, living in caves, while the robots take over and the richest get taxed to the hills and probably clear off abroad, and no industry comes in because the tax environment is too harsh.
So negative, man.
No, I'm just reading what you said, and I'm reading what's happening out there. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us in the studio, and that's the former Labour advisor and political commentator Matthew Torbett. Thank you very much. Pleasure. Now, still to come, some shocking exclusive figures on the number of asylum seekers entering the European Union in the last 5 years. You will not believe these figures, and you will not want to miss them.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives. Again, down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said Storm. You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
We'll be there.
This is GB News.
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, Martin Daubney. Now, at present, JD Vance, the Vice President nominee for the Republican Party, is speaking in Ohio. Moments ago, he spoke about Kamala Harris. Let's take a listen.
4 months of me embarrassing you. That's what we do. But I just think when I consider how good this country has been to me, I just think about how much I owe to it. That gratitude should come with a sense of responsibility. And when I think about Kamala Harris, who I guess is our vice presidential candidate officially, but I guess she's going to run for president now because Joe Biden dropped out of the race. You know, when I see... I'm going to take bets here. We're going to start a betting pool just in this auditorium. But I wonder, when I see her give a speech, and she talks about the history of this country, not with appreciation, but with condemnation. And look, of course, every country, just like every family, certainly mine, has its pockmarks, right? Not everything's perfect. It's never going to be. But if you want to lead this country, you should feel grateful for it. You should feel a sense of gratitude. And I never hear that gratitude come through when I listen to Kamala Harris. And that's what we've got to do. Fundamentally, you're going to agree, hopefully, since you're here, you're going to agree, hopefully, with most of what President Trump and I want to do. We want to...
JD Vance there saying he never hears of appreciation, only condemnation from Kamala Harris. Now, moving on, today it's emerged that there were more than 1 million asylum applications, first-time applications, that is, in the European Union last year. The figure was 631,000 in 2019, and although it fell over the next 2 years, of course, due to COVID, it hit almost 1.05 million in 2023. That's an astonishing rise of 66%. Now, here to pour over those figures with me is a specialist immigration lawyer, Ivan Sampson. Ivan, welcome to the studio. Astonishing figures. Last week, it came out. These are, by the way, European Commission official data. This is the real deal. 1.265 illegal immigrants in the 27 European Union member states. Now, this is the asylum figures in 1 year, over 1.049 million, a further 1.17 million applications back in the system. Add all of that up, you've got the thick end of 4 million people in the EU. And this report makes a damning conclusion. It's by Lee Evans from facts4eu.org. And it says that the European Union's asylum problem could become Britain's small boat nightmare. What's your take?
Well, I think we're going to take a lot of people out of those figures. And the problem is, even if they've claimed asylum in Europe, they can still come here and claim asylum again. So while they've got their asylum applications pending in whichever country they decide to claim, they can still make every effort to try and make another application here. And because there's no cooperation, we had that before under the Dublin Convention. When we left the EU, we should have been thinking about this and agreeing a treaty akin to that, so that a person cannot claim asylum twice. So that's the first point. The second point is that the UK has always been the choice destination for asylum seekers. Why? Because we have a fair asylum system. I hear stories from my...
Fair or soft?
Well, I describe it as fair because we consider the evidence, we make a fair decision. I'm talking about the court, not the Home Office. The Home Office position is always refuse unless you can convince me otherwise. But our court systems, the whole world comes to the UK for justice. And that's the reason that many asylum seekers want to have that opportunity here, because they don't get that in the European Union.
And the figures also paint a picture. There are two destination countries, as you say, with that magnetism, simply for a better quality of life. They are Germany and the United Kingdom. You raise a key point there. The fact that an asylum seeker or an illegal immigrant can claim asylum in another member state, well, that's it. It's a fait accompli. That's not the case. No. They then are making their way towards the French coast, and they already have, if you like, that bureaucratic legitimacy.
Yes, it is. And look, if they are a failed asylum seeker, let's say, in one country, well, they can still come over here and claim asylum again. We need to have more cooperation with the EU. Another treaty, similar to the Dublin Convention, said if you've claimed asylum in the EU, in any EU country, you cannot then claim asylum here. You should be sent back to complete your claim. Or it's been rejected, well, your case has been determined.
Is that going to happen under a Labour government? There was new legislation talked about today by Yvette Cooper of fast-tracking those from safe countries, India, Albania, Vietnam. The problem is we have about a 70% acceptance rate. So we have 100,000 on our own backlog. Well, that means 70,000 getting in. Fast-tracking them won't send out a message to the people smugglers, don't come to Britain. It rolls out the red carpet.
Yeah, I hear you. Look, 95% of people claiming asylum are from 5 countries. We have no return agreements with those 5 countries. So even if we fast-track people to safe countries, I'm afraid when someone comes here and claims asylum and they refuse, what do we do with them? There's nowhere to send them. So
well, there was Rwanda, but that's been scrapped on day one of the Labour Party government. May have been a flawed plan, but it was a plan.
Yes, but it was never going to work because it was unlawful. And it was unlawful from the outset. On top of that, they tried to exclude judicial scrutiny. I mean, that's unheard of in our constitution, unwritten constitution.
And Ivan, lawyers like yourself must be licking your lips. This is the field day for you. This paints a picture of an endless wave of asylum seekers coming to our shores, a fast-track system which overridingly favours them remaining in Britain. It's absolutely not what people voted for in every single election, apart from the last one maybe, since 2010. You paint a grim picture of simply there's no way we can stop this tide.
No, there is a way. We need to have an agreement with the EU. Look,
they'll expect something in return.
Yes. So the way to stop small boats is stop them getting in the small boats in France. There's no other way. Because once they set off and they're in our territorial waters, we have international treaty obligations under maritime law and the Refugee Convention to rescue them, to entertain their asylum claim, put them up in accommodation, feed them, put them through our appeal process, and at the end of it, we can't return them. So the only solution is a deal with the EU.
Or we could actually enforce our borders and do what we said all along. A final point to mention, Ivan Sampson, of all of these asylum figures, data and the illegal immigration, 82% are male. 82% male of all of these people going into the EU. And as this report concludes, the asylum problem in the EU is about to become our small boat nightmare. Thank you very much for joining us, immigration lawyer Ivan Sampson. Always a pleasure. Now, still to come, an extraordinary development on the weekend's IT shutdown, because Microsoft is now blaming the European Union for the fiasco. So did Brussels, caused the biggest blackout since the Blitz. That's up next.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark Meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly, you've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, Martin Daubney. Now, Microsoft has blamed the European Union regulations for the world's largest IT outage caused by a faulty CrowdStrike update. The company claims the 2009 agreement with the European Commission restricted it from implementing security changes that could have prevented the incident, which led to chaos, of course, in airports, doctors, surgeries and businesses globally. So, did Brussels cause the biggest blackout since the Blitz? You couldn't make it up. And joining me now to discuss this is someone who had her own flight delayed by the blackout, security expert and columnist Elizabeth Braw. Elizabeth, welcome to the studio. This is one of those studios, one of these stories, obviously, that gets me rather excited because meddling by the EU is to blame. Explain to us, if you could, why Microsoft has a beef with Brussels.
Brussels is the protector within the European Union of competition, and Brussels, namely the European Commission, has long felt that Microsoft is too dominant in the market. And I think we all remember when the European Commission told Microsoft that it wouldn't be allowed, or it mustn't have just its own browser on our laptops or indeed on our computers. And that's what the European Commission does. And it has also told Microsoft they mustn't just have its own cyber security program on its system. It must have alternatives, and this was one of the alternatives.
And what happened next is that external developers, such as CrowdStrike, were allowed access to the data, and then the chaos ensued. And for this reason, Apple and Google both refused to get into bed with Brussels because they said, we're the experts, leave it to us. You're the bureaucrats, don't meddle. QED, it's proof. Brussels got involved with Microsoft and they basically laid out the carpet for a cyber attack that Vladimir Putin would have been proud of.
He would have been proud of it, but I think this is a cheap shot by Microsoft. It is a good thing that the European Commission looks after competition to make sure there are no monopolies in the European Union. And rather than telling the world, our supplier, namely CrowdStrike, got it wrong this time, we will make sure that they do a better job this time, or otherwise we won't do business with them. Rather than being upfront and honest, Microsoft then tries to take a cheap shot, it sounds like, at the European Union. And I think what Microsoft should have done, and will hopefully do, is to say, well, we got it wrong this time, and we'll do it much better next time. And that would strengthen Microsoft's position, because then he would be able to say, say, look, we have done everything we can. We don't try to get away from any responsibilities, and we act in the interests of our users, be they companies, be they ordinary consumers like me who were left stranded.
Except Microsoft are saying if Brussels hadn't got involved, if they'd left it to the experts, then third parties like CrowdStrike wouldn't have been able to go in and make the updates, which did this fatal system crash. So I'll put it to you again. I'm sorry to be persistent, but it's absolutely true. If Brussels hadn't meddled with Microsoft, this wouldn't have happened.
The problem is CrowdStrike. One of the companies out there on the market made a mistake, and mistakes will happen. And I put it to you again, Vladimir Putin will exploit such vulnerabilities. So I'm not saying it's a good thing we had this incident, but it's a good thing that we learned what can happen when systems go down, and hopefully we'll be better prepared for it next time. And maybe we can thank the European Commission for that.
Isn't that astonishing? And thank you very much, Elizabeth. And in the wings here, I can hear Jacob Rees-Mogg cackling away slightly and licking your lips anyway, the anticipation of the fact that... Isn't it astonishing, Jacob? Of course, State of the Nation is up next, and I know you're going to be covering this story. It's simply too irresistible to ignore. Meddling from Brussels has paved the way to show how hostile partners, hostile actors from outside of Britain could bring our country to a grinding halt.
Yes, it shows that Brussels doesn't really understand competition, and it should never have been given responsibility for it, because the integrity of computer systems is really important. And it's one thing to say that Apple ought to allow other apps to appear on its iPhone. It's quite another to say that the fundamentals of a system should be written by a third party. It's ignorance in Brussels, failure of Brussels, and thank heavens we're no longer a member. And I hope that the UK government, His Majesty's government, will not bully companies to do things that harm passengers. And I mean, hundreds of thousands of people were stranded because of this. Missed flights had to be reorganised.
Although that may be wishful thinking, seems like at the moment David Lammy, Sir Keir Starmer would like to do all these kind of piecemeal deals with the European Union on things like immigration, on things like data sharing. Aside from this story, what else you can
there's a terrible bill in the King's Speech about copying Brussels regulation, which I hope this disaster will remind people not to do. But my main thing I'm going to be talking about is Joe Biden and the lies that were told to the American people by the left, and the fact that the president was a puppet. So people voted for a president, and then he was operated by people behind the scenes, the infamous blob.
And who do you think that Democrat blob is? Barack Obama has been very instrumental, it would seem, in Joe Biden standing down. Very, very conspicuous by his absence in giving the blessing to Kamala Harris.
But this is what's so undemocratic about it, because you don't know. So you vote for one person who is there and is meant to be the leader of the free world, the leader of your nation, the head of state, and you find, in fact, it's a cabal of people behind him who are operating things when he's simply not in a mental state to do it. And that's so undemocratic. You vote for one thing and you get another. No wonder Donald Trump is so popular.
The Kamala cabal. Quickly, we've got about 20 seconds. Do you think that Kamala Harris has any chance of stopping the Trump train?
The Trump train is the Express, isn't it? It's the Flying Scotsman, and he's got Scottish heritage, hasn't he? He is the Flying Scotsman of American politics.
So you think there's no chance of Kamala Harris touching Trump?
Very unwise to predict election results, but Trump is steaming ahead.
I'll take that as a yes. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining me in the studio. Jacob Rees-Mogg, of course, State of the Nation is up next. I'll be back tomorrow, 3 till 6 p.m. But first, it's your weather with Alex Burrell.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. For many, tomorrow looks like it's going to be a bit drier and a bit sunnier with that too. That being said, there will be some showery rain around. Most of today's showers are clearing away towards the east as we go overnight, but there is another system coming into the west and the southwest, and we are going to see further outbreaks of rain, which could be heavy, pushing across parts of Wales and also southwest England as we go overnight. Elsewhere, apart from a few showers towards the the east-northeast, it's going to be largely dry, and there will be some clear skies around, but for many, another warm night. Temperatures, particularly in the towns and cities, holding up in the mid-teens Celsius. Some outbreaks of rain then first thing could be quite heavy across some southern parts first of all, originally around central southern parts, but the heavier bursts are going to push their way eastwards through the morning before clearing away. Elsewhere across much of England and Wales, a few showery bursts, but also some decent bright sunny weather first thing. Largely fine and sunny across Northern Ireland and many parts of northern England. Across Scotland, a bit of a west-east split. Around eastern areas, it's going to be a bit cloudier, a few outbreaks of rain here, likely to be drier, brighter across more central and western parts of Scotland. Through the day then, we are going to see a scattering of showers here or there. Many places will actually avoid the showers and stay largely dry, but a few showers are possible and they could be a little bit on the heavy side, though I'm not expecting any thunder like we've seen through today. With a bit more sunshine around, temperatures are going to be a bit higher than they have been lately. Temperatures reaching highs of around 24, 25 Celsius, possibly even 26 Celsius. Any showers will die out as we go through tomorrow night into Wednesday, and Wednesday looks like it will start mostly dry. We can expect some showery rain pushing its way through across parts of Scotland and perhaps some showers kicking off over eastern parts of England, but elsewhere it's looking largely fine yet again before some very wet weather pushes in, particularly across southern parts as we go through Thursday. See you later.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said stump.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
We'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
she could have said stump.
You made my argument for me.
What percent?
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter.